My name is Evelyn, and I'm 71 years old. Every morning starts the same way. A cup of green tea, the sound of the radio softly murmuring in the kitchen, and the gentle creak of my old oak chair as I sit by the window. My house faces a quiet street, lined with maple trees, that have seen me through nearly 4 decades of seasons. The mailman knows me by name. The neighbors wave, but don't stop to chat much anymore. It's a peaceful life, or at least that's what I tell people when they ask. But peace and loneliness have a way of wearing the same disguise. When my husband, Leonard, passed 10 years ago, I thought grief was something you eventually get over. It isn't. You just learn to carry it differently. Some days it feels light as air. Other days it sits in your chest like an anchor. Still, I keep moving. My daughter calls every Sunday from Seattle to make sure I'm eating right and taking my medicine. "Mom, are you walking enough?" she always asks. I tell her yes, though I only make it around the block most days. My knees aren't what they used to be. I joke that they're weather forecasters. They ache before it rains. There are other signs of time, too. My reading glasses always perched somewhere I can't find them. The garden shrinking a little each year. The music from my youth now considered vintage. But inside, I still feel young in flashes. Sometimes a song or a smell brings me right back to the girl I used to be. That feeling hit me one morning when I found an old record while dusting the bookshelf. Carole King, Tapestry. The cover was worn, the edges frayed, but when I put it on the turntable, that first piano note filled the house like sunlight breaking through clouds. "It's too late, baby," she sang, and I laughed out loud at how I still remembered every word. It was then that I noticed something else. The faucet in the kitchen sink was dripping again. Drip, drip, drip. It had been doing that for weeks, but I'd ignored it, hoping it would fix itself. Leonard used to handle those things. He was the Mr. Fix-It in our house, and I'd always just made sandwiches and coffee while he worked. Now, the silence that followed each drip felt louder somehow. I finally decided to do something about it. My neighbor across the street, Janet, recommended a handyman service. She said, "Call Harbor Home Repair. They're local, honest, and the fellow they send out, you'll like him. He's polite, doesn't talk down to people like some of them do." The next morning, the doorbell rang right on time. When I opened the door, there stood a man I hadn't expected. He was younger than I imagined, maybe 40, maybe less. Tall, with dark blonde hair and a calm expression that reminded me of someone who's lived a little, but still expects good things from life. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, smiling. "I'm Jack from Harbor Repair. You called about a leaky faucet?" His voice had that easy warmth that makes you want to trust someone. I stepped aside to let him in. "Yes, come on through. It's the one in the kitchen. It's been testing my patience." He crouched beneath the sink, tools clinking softly as he worked. I stood nearby, feeling awkward. After a few minutes, he looked up and said with a grin, "You don't have to hover. Most folks just point me to the leak and vanish." I laughed. "Well, I'm not most folks. I like to supervise. Old habits." He chuckled. "My grandmother was like that too. She said the moment she stopped watching people fix things, everything went wrong." "That sounds about right," I said. As he worked, we started to talk. Small talk at first. About the weather, the stubborn humidity this summer, and how the neighborhood had changed over the years. "You've been here a while?" he asked. "Since 1984, I said proudly. "Back when kids still rode bikes on this street, and every house smelt like fresh-cut grass." He smiled. "My grandparents had a neighborhood like that. everyone knew each other. They used to host block parties with homemade lemonade and records spinning on the porch. Oh, we did that too, I said, my voice softening with memory. Leonard and I used to dance in the yard after everyone left, barefoot under the porch light. He always said the best songs were meant for two people who knew all the same memories. He tightened a valve, testing it. "That's beautiful," he said quietly. When he finished, the dripping had stopped. I clapped my hands together like a little girl. "You did it! My sanity is saved." He said, "Just a loose washer. Simple fix." He wiped his hands and looked around the kitchen. "You've got a lovely home. Feels like it's full of stories." "It is," I said. "Too many to count." Before he left, I offered him iced tea. It felt rude not to. We sat at the small kitchen table by the window. He noticed the record player still humming softly. "Carole King? My mom used to play that when she cleaned on Saturdays." "Good taste runs in the family," I replied. He grinned. "Guess it does." He told me he lived a few towns over, recently divorced, raising his teenage daughter on weekends. He said fixing things helped him feel useful again. "Sometimes," he said, "it's not the pipes or boards that need repair. It's people." That line stuck with me long after he left. The next few days felt brighter. I found myself humming along to the radio, taking longer walks, even calling my daughter just to chat instead of waiting for Sunday. Then, one morning, as I was sitting by the window, writing out a grocery list, I saw Jack's truck slow down in front of the house. He rolled down the window and called out, "Morning, Miss Evelyn. Just driving by to see if your sink is behaving." "It is," I said, smiling, "but you can come check anyway." He laughed, parked, and joined me on the porch. We talked for an hour. He told me about his daughter's love for old Polaroid cams and how she'd started collecting vintage postcards. I told him I still had boxes of my own, ones Leonard and I had sent from our road trips out west. We went through them together later that week. Dusty, curling cards with handwritten notes from places that don't even exist anymore. "Look," I said, holding one up. This was from 1973, a roadside diner in Texas that made the best peach pie I've ever tasted. He smiled. "You should tell those stories to someone who hasn't heard them 1,000 times." "Who says I haven't?" I teased. That's when I realized something. For the first time in years, I wanted to be seen again. Not as someone's widow or someone's mother, but simply as Evelyn. And that feeling, as unfamiliar as it was, made me feel alive. As he left that evening, Jack paused at the door. He said, "You know, most jobs I finish and forget, but I think I'll remember this one." I didn't say anything for a moment, afraid my voice might betray how much those words meant. "Thank you, Jack," I finally said, "for fixing the leak." He smiled. "Anytime, but something tells me that wasn't the only thing that needed fixing." That night, as the house settled into quiet, I sat by the window and watched the porch light flicker across the yard. The record was still spinning softly in the background, and for the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like the pause before something new begins. The days after Jack's visit passed with an odd lightness, as though someone had opened a window in my soul. Everything looked familiar, yet quietly new. The morning sunlight on the countertop, the hum of the refrigerator, even the sound of birds outside the window. I didn't realize how much color the world had lost until it started coming back. We began to see each other often. Sometimes it was by chance. He'd wave from his truck as he passed by. But more often, it was by design. He'd stop in to check the pipes, or I'd bake too many muffins and need help getting rid of them. We both knew what we were doing, but neither of us said it out loud. He started teasing me about my routines. "You really eat oatmeal every morning?" "It keeps me regular," I said matter-of-factly, and he nearly choked, laughing. One afternoon, we sat on the porch, sipping iced tea, talking about the little things. He told me how hard it was to keep up with his daughter's world, all phones and apps and screens. "When I was a kid, we actually talked to each other," he said. "I miss that too," I told him. "I used to write letters every week, to friends, to my sister, even to myself sometimes. There's something comforting about waiting for words to arrive." He smiled. "My grandma used to say a letter was like a heartbeat on paper." "That's exactly right," I said. "Emails don't have that kind of soul." That evening, after he left, I pulled out an old box of correspondence I'd kept from the 70s and 80s. The envelopes were yellowed, edges curled. But when I untied the ribbon and opened the first one, it felt like opening a window into another lifetime. There were birthday cards from my parents, postcards from college friends, and dozens of little notes from Leonard. Just sweet, ordinary things. "Don't forget to feed the cat. Dinner at 7. Love you more than the Yankees." I found myself smiling and crying at the same time. A few days later, Jack called. "How are you feeling today?" "Oh, the usual. My back's reminding me I'm not 30 anymore. Doctor says it's just arthritis." "I'll bring over some of that peppermint cream my daughter swears by. It's magic and smells like candy canes." "Are you sure that's not because she's young and gullible?" I teased. "Maybe, but what's life without a little hope in a jar?" We talked for nearly an hour. It was easy, natural, the kind of conversation that doesn't need to go anywhere. When I hung up, I noticed I was smiling again. But the most interesting thing happened a few days later. I was reorganizing a drawer in the guest room, a task I'd been putting off for years, when I found an old shoebox buried under a pile of scarves. Inside were Polaroid photos from the early 70s, me and Leonard at the county fair, our first house, still half-painted, our son's first day of school, time frozen in faded colors. As I sorted through them, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, there was Jack, holding a brown paper bag, peppermint cream delivery, and a loaf of banana bread, overpayment for your muffins. I invited him in, and when he saw the photos spread across the table, he whistled softly. "Wow, look at these. They're like little ghosts, aren't they? Smiling ones." He picked up one picture, me at 25, sitting on the hood of our first car, hair blowing in the wind. "You look happy here," he said. I was. We didn't have much, but we thought we had everything. He smiled gently. "You still have that look, you know." It caught me off guard, the sincerity in his tone. I didn't know what to say, so I poured us both some coffee instead. We sat for a while, the radio humming quietly in the background. An old familiar song began to play, The Righteous Brothers' Unchained Melody. It stopped me cold. Leonard and I had danced to that at our wedding. My throat tightened. Jack noticed. "You okay?" "Yes," I whispered. "Just memories catching up." He nodded. "Music does that. Brings the heart right to the surface." He didn't try to fill the silence or change the subject. He just sat there, patient, present. And in that stillness, I realized how rare that kind of listening is. Someone sitting beside you not to fix your pain, but to share the weight of it. When he finally stood to leave, he looked at me in that kind, steady way of his and said, "You know, Evelyn, sometimes memories don't ask to be forgotten. They just want company." After he left, I played the record again, not because it made me sad, but because it made me feel connected to who I was, to what I had loved, and to what I was still learning to love again. Over the next few weeks, our visits became part of the landscape of my days. He'd stop by after work, I'd have tea ready. We'd talk about everything: the price of groceries, the aches that come and go, how the world moves too fast now. "They're calling music from the 90s oldies," I said one evening, horrified. Jack laughed. "Guess that makes us classics." "Vintage," I corrected him, smiling. "Sounds fancier." He grinned. "You're right. You're definitely vintage, the kind that never goes out of style." He said it so easily, so naturally, that I didn't even blush. I just felt warm. One evening, the air turned cool, and I put on one of Leonard's old sweaters, the navy one with the missing button. When Jack saw it, he said, "You know that color suits you." I laughed. "It suited my husband first." He hesitated, then said softly, "He was a lucky man." Something in the way he said it broke me open a little bit. Not in a painful way, in the way a heart opens to light after being closed too long. That night, as we sat by the window, the street outside washed in soft amber light, Jack turned to me and said, "Evelyn, can I tell you something without you thinking I've lost my mind?" "I can try," I said, half teasing. He took a deep breath. "You make me want to slow down, not because I'm tired, but because I don't want to rush through things that feel right." For a long time, I didn't speak. My eyes stung and my voice barely came out. I didn't think anyone would ever say something like that to me again. He smiled gently. "Guess life still has a few surprises left." Then he reached for my hand. His touch was light, almost cautious, like he was asking permission without words. I didn't pull away. The warmth that passed between us felt like music, something remembered but not forgotten. We sat there, two people from different decades, different stories, but somehow speaking the same quiet language. A week later, we shared our first kiss. It wasn't rushed or dramatic, just simple, soft, and true. The kind of kiss that says, "I see you. I still believe in tenderness." And that, I think, is the real miracle of getting older. Realizing that the heart never stops wanting to be understood. Now, months later, the faucet still works, the house feels lighter, and I wake each morning with that same cup of tea, the radio humming in the background, but sometimes there's a second cup beside mine, and that's enough to make the world glow again. I still keep Leonard's letters, I still play the old records, but now they don't feel like remnants of a finished life. They feel like bridges between what was and what still can be. Jack likes to say that every house has a heart, and if you listen closely, you can hear it beat. I think he's right, because mine is beating again, stronger than ever. Love, it turns out, doesn't retire. It doesn't come with an expiration date. It just waits patiently for you to open the door, and sometimes, if you're lucky, it walks in wearing work boots and a kind smile, ready to fix more than a faucet.